The silence hit Rachel like a wall when she stepped through the front door. She was still wearing the black dress from her father's funeral, her eyes red and swollen from hours of crying. The scent of lily clung to her clothes, mixing with the stale air inside the house she had left only 6 hours earlier. Something was wrong. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that screamed absence, that whispered of things deliberately removed. Rachel's heels clicked against the hardwood floor as she walked through the living room, her heart beginning to race with each step. Michael's gaming console was gone from the entertainment center. His leather jacket wasn't hanging by the door. The framed photos of them together, their wedding day, their anniversary trip to Napa, that Christmas morning when they'd laughed until they cried, all of them had been removed from the mantel, leaving only clean rectangles where dust hadn't settled. Rachel forced herself to breathe slowly, to stay calm. Maybe he had moved things around. Maybe he was upstairs packing for a work trip. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for why her husband hadn't shown up to her father's funeral and why their home looked like someone had selectively emptied it. Then, she saw the papers on the kitchen table. They were placed in the exact center, impossible to miss, arranged with a precision that felt deliberately cruel. The top page had bold black letters that seemed to jump off the white paper. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Rachel's knees buckled. She caught herself against the granite counter, her fingers gripping the cold stone. Her father had been in the ground for less than 4 hours. 4 hours. She had stood at his graveside feeling like her entire world was ending. And the whole time, these papers had been waiting for her here. Her hands trembled as she picked up the document. Filed 3 days ago. 3 days. While she was choosing her father's casket, while she was writing his obituary, while she was sobbing in the hospital chapel as the doctors told her there was no more time left, Michael had been filing for divorce. She flipped through the pages, her vision blurring with fresh tears. There was more. So much more. Michael was claiming he deserved half of her anticipated inheritance, half of everything her father had built over 30 years. The petition specifically mentioned expected substantial inheritance from deceased father-in-law and equitable distribution of marital assets, including future inheritance funds. The phone in her purse began to ring. She pulled it out with numb fingers. Her sister, Lauren. "Rachel, honey, are you okay? You left the reception so quickly. He's gone." Rachel's voice sounded hollow, mechanical, like it belonged to someone else. "Michael, he filed for divorce. While Dad was dying, he filed for divorce." The silence on the other end lasted 3 long seconds. Then Lauren's voice came back, sharp with fury. "I'm coming over right now. Don't you dare move." Rachel ended the call and walked through the rest of the house in a daze. The bedroom confirmed her worst fears. Michael's side of the closet was completely empty. His toiletries were gone from the bathroom. Even his protein powder had been removed from the kitchen cabinet. He hadn't just filed papers. He had moved out completely. While she was burying her father, Michael had packed up his life and walked away. She found herself standing in front of her father's study, the one room in the house that had been his whenever he visited. She pushed open the door and sank into his worn leather chair, breathing in the faint smell of his cologne that still lingered in the fabric. "Dad," she whispered to the empty room. "What do I do?" Her phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Against every instinct, she opened it. The message contained a single photo. Michael and the blonde woman, kissing in what looked like a hotel room. The woman wore an expensive-looking silk robe. Michael's hand rested possessively on her waist. Familiar and intimate. Below the photo, a message. "Thought you should know who he's been with. Amber sends her regards. She wanted to make sure you knew he's been planning this for 6 months. Sorry for your loss. 6 months. Rachel stared at the screen until the words blurred together. Her father had been diagnosed with terminal cancer 7 months ago. The timeline clicked into place with sickening clarity. Michael had started planning his exit. The moment her father got sick, the front door burst open with enough force to rattle the frame. "Rachel!" Lauren's voice echoed through the house. "Where are you?" "Study," Rachel called back, surprised by how steady her voice sounded now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, harder. Lauren appeared in the doorway, still in her funeral dress, her face flushed from rushing over. Behind her was their cousin, Jason, a corporate attorney who had flown in for the funeral from Boston. "Show me the papers," Lauren demanded. Rachel handed them over and watched her sister's face transform from concern to pure rage. Jason read over Lauren's shoulder, his expression growing darker with each page. "This was filed in family court," Jason said quietly. "He's asking for immediate temporary support while the divorce is pending. He's claiming he's been the primary homemaker and needs financial assistance." "Primary homemaker?" Rachel laughed, a bitter sound that didn't reach her eyes. "He works full-time as a project manager. I'm the one who handled everything at home." "He's lying in his petition," Jason continued, flipping through pages. "He claims you kept him in the dark about your finances and that he deserves compensation for supporting you during your father's illness." "I supported him." Rachel's voice rose. "I paid for everything when he lost his job 2 years ago. His car payments, his credit cards, everything." Lauren put a hand on her shoulder. "We'll fight this." "Jason, can you recommend someone?" "I'll make some calls tonight," Jason promised. "But Rachel, I need to ask you something important. What did your father leave you?" Rachel shook her head slowly. "I don't know yet. The will reading is scheduled for next week." "Trevor knows that," Jason noted. "He knows everything goes through probate first. But he filed anyway, which means he's betting on something big. He wouldn't risk this lawsuit if he didn't think there was substantial money involved." "My father's business has been struggling," Rachel said slowly. "He told me himself about 3 months ago. He said things were tight, that he'd made some bad investments. I don't know what Michael thinks he's getting, but I don't think there's as much as he hopes." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "Did Michael know about the struggling business?" "I never told him. Dad asked me not to. He said he didn't want Michael to worry, that he was handling it." "So Michael thinks your father was still wealthy," Jason said. "He thinks he's about to cash in." Rachel looked down at the divorce papers again, at Michael's signature scrolled across the bottom. "Filed and stamped 3 days ago." 3 days ago, when her father was taking his last breaths. "He waited for my father to die," she said softly. "He actually waited." "He's calculating," Lauren spat. "A heartless snake." Rachel's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. This time, it was a screenshot of text. Messages between Michael and Amber. "Michael, once her old man kicks it, we're set. My lawyer says I can claim half of everything. Amber, and then we can finally be together. No more hiding. Michael, give it a few months after the funeral. Let the inheritance clear, then we'll have enough to start fresh wherever we want. Amber, what about Rachel? Michael, what about her? She'll be fine. Her daddy's money will comfort her." The messages were dated from 4 weeks ago. Rachel handed the phone to Lauren without a word. She watched her sister's face turn crimson, watched Jason's jaw clench tight. "I want to destroy him," Rachel said quietly. "I want to take everything from him. Everything he thought he'd get. Everything he hoped for. Everything he planned. I want him to regret the day he ever thought he could use my father's death as a payday." Lauren looked at her younger sister with something like pride. "Then that's exactly what we'll do." Jason nodded slowly. "The will reading is next week. Let's see what the situation actually is before we make any moves. But Rachel, you need to be prepared for whatever's in that will. If there's less than Michael expects, we can use that. If there's more, we need to protect it. I don't care about the money, Rachel said. I care about making sure he doesn't get a single penny. Oh, honey, Lauren said, squeezing her hand. By the time we're done with him, he's going to wish he'd never met you. The law office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise. Rachel sat in the conference room flanked by Lauren and Jason, waiting for her father's attorney to arrive. The room smelled of expensive leather and old money. David Harrison entered with a warm briefcase and a sad smile. He'd been her father's attorney for 20 years. Rachel, he said, taking her hand in both of his. I'm so deeply sorry for your loss. Thomas was a good man. One of the best clients I ever had. More than that, he was a friend. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Please, call me David. We're going to be working together quite a bit in the coming months. He settled into his chair and opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick folder. I'll be honest with you from the start. Your father's affairs are complicated. Rachel felt her stomach tighten. Complicated how? David spread several documents across the table. Your father's will is straightforward. Everything goes to you. The house, his personal effects, his stake in Carter Industries, and several investment accounts. However, the execution of that will is where things get complex. Because of the business struggles? Rachel asked. David looked surprised. He told you. About 3 months ago. He said things were tight. That's putting it mildly, I'm afraid. David pulled out a financial statement. Carter Industries is currently $1.8 million in debt. The company has been hemorrhaging money for the past 3 years due to several failed expansion attempts and some unfortunate contracts that fell through. Lauren inhaled sharply. Jason leaned forward, studying the numbers. 1.8 million, Rachel repeated numbly. The company itself is worth approximately 2.5 million in assets, the building, equipment, intellectual property, existing contracts. But with the debt factored in, the net value is roughly $700,000. And that's only if we can keep the company operational long enough to sell it or turn it around. Rachel's mind raced. Michael thought she was inheriting a fortune. Instead, she was inheriting debt and a failing company. What about his other assets? Jason asked. The house? Investments? The house has a mortgage of $280,000 remaining. It's worth about $450,000 in the current market, so that's about $170,000 in equity. The investment accounts were liquidated over the past year to try to keep the company afloat. There's about $40,000 left in various savings accounts. So total, she's looking at maybe $900,000 in assets, Jason calculated. Minus whatever debts and final expenses need to be paid. Roughly $800,000, yes, David confirmed. It's not nothing, but it's nowhere near what I think some people were expecting. Michael, Rachel said flatly. You mean Michael? David's expression remained professional, but she caught the flicker of distaste in his eyes. I was served with a copy of the divorce petition. I have to say, the timing is ... unfortunate. Unfortunate? Lauren muttered. That's one word for it? However, David continued, pulling out another document. There's something else. Something your father made me promise not to reveal until after the will reading. But I think you need to know now, given the circumstances. Rachel straightened in her chair. David slid a document across to her. Your father set up a trust fund 15 years ago, when Carter Industries was at its peak. The trust is held separately from the company and his personal assets. It was designed to be protected from business failures or lawsuits. How much? Jason asked. $25 million. The room fell silent. Rachel stared at the number on the page. Certain she had misread it. 25 million. she whispered. It's invested conservatively, managed by a separate firm. Your father never touched it, even when the company was struggling. He wanted to make sure you always had something, no matter what happened to him or the business. Why didn't he use it to save the company? Rachel asked. He couldn't. The trust has very specific terms. David pointed to a clause in the document. The money can only be released to you under certain conditions. First, Thomas had to be deceased. Second, you had to make a genuine attempt to save Carter Industries. If you can make the company profitable within 2 years of his death, the full trust transfers to you, free and clear. And if she can't? Lauren asked. If the company fails or is sold at a loss, the trust goes to charity. All $25 million. Rachel felt like the air had been sucked from the room. He wanted me to prove if I could do it. He wanted me to earn it. Your father believed in you, David said gently. He told me so many times. He said you had the mind and the heart to rebuild what he'd lost. But he also wanted to make sure the money would do good in the world if things didn't work out. Michael doesn't know about this, Rachel said. No one knew except your father and myself. Not even the company board. Thomas was very clear that this information was to remain confidential until after his death. So Michael filed for divorce, thinking I was getting maybe $800,000 from the estate. Rachel said slowly. And he has no idea about the $25 million, Jason added. And he can't touch it anyway. The trust terms are ironclad. It only goes to Rachel, and only if she meets the conditions. Lauren was grinning now. So he's going to fight for half of a struggling business and some equity in a house. If he gets anything at all, David said. Given the timing of the divorce filing and some of the claims he's making, you have grounds to contest his share of the marital assets. Especially if we can prove he knew about your father's condition and deliberately waited to file. Rachel thought about the text messages, the photo of Michael and Amber, the timeline that showed his calculated patience. I can prove it, she said. Rachel stood outside Carter Industries for the first time since becoming its unofficial owner. The building looked tired, paint peeling. Several parking lot lights burned out. The company sign faded to a dull gray. It was like looking at a photograph of something that used to shine. She used the key David had given her and entered through the main door. The lobby was dark and empty. She flipped on the lights and looked around at the walls covered with photos from better days ribbon cuttings, contract signings, her father shaking hands with partners and clients. In every photo, he was smiling. Can I help you? Rachel turned to find a man in his 60s standing in the doorway. He wore a wrinkled shirt and held a coffee mug. His hair was gray and thinning, and he had the exhausted look of someone fighting a losing battle for too long. William Parker? Rachel asked. That's me. And you must be Rachel. He walked over and shook her hand. I'm sorry about your father. Thomas was the best partner I ever had. Thank you. How long did you two work together? 21 years. I was employee number 7, back when the company was just Thomas and a handful of guys in a rented space. I watched him build all this from nothing. William gestured around the lobby. And now I'm watching it fall apart. Not exactly the legacy either of us wanted. David told me about the financial situation. William sighed. Did he tell you how bad it really is? Because the numbers on paper don't capture the full picture. We're 60 days away from missing payroll. Our biggest client is threatening to pull out because we've been late on deliveries. The bank calls twice a week about the line of credit. And morale is in the basement because everyone knows we're sinking. Why didn't my father tell me it was this bad? Pride, mostly. You know how Thomas was. He thought he could fix it himself. Kept saying he just needed one good contract, one big deal, and everything would turn around. William took a sip of his coffee. The problem is, he was chasing the wrong deals. Trying to expand into markets we didn't understand. taking on projects that were too big for our capacity. The company got stretched too thin. Rachel walked over to one of the photos on the wall her father at the company's 20th anniversary, surrounded by employees. Everyone looked happy, successful, secure. What went wrong? She asked. William joined her at the photo. About 4 years ago, Thomas got it in his head that we needed to go national. We'd always been a regional manufacturer serving this area, and we were good at it. But he wanted more. He wanted to build an empire. So he expanded too fast. Borrowed too much, hired too many people, took on contracts we couldn't handle. And when those contracts fell through, we were left holding the debt and the overhead. Rachel spent the next 3 hours going through the company's financials with William. He was right. It was ugly. The debt was worse than David had indicated. The contracts were bleeding money. The overhead was crushing them. But as Rachel dug deeper, she started to see patterns. The company's core business, manufacturing custom industrial parts for regional clients, was still profitable. It was all the expansion attempts, the diversification projects, the ventures into unfamiliar markets that were losing money. What if we went back to basics? She asked William. Cut all the expansion projects. Focus only on what we're good at. William leaned back in his chair. We'd have to lay off about 18 people, cancel contracts, which would cost us penalty fees, and we'd lose the satellite office entirely. How much would we save annually? William did some quick calculations. Probably $650,000 a year in direct costs. But we'd also lose about $200,000 in revenue from those projects. So net savings of $450,000. That still leaves us with over $1 million in existing debt to deal with. Right. And that's where it gets tricky. Rachel thought about the $25 million trust fund. She couldn't touch that money unless she made the company profitable. But if she could just get the company stable, prove that Cotter Industries was viable, then the money would be hers. I want to save this company, Rachel said, looking William in the eye. My father built it over 30 years. I'm not going to let it die just because he made some bad decisions at the end. William studied her for a long moment. It won't be easy. You'll need to make hard choices. Fire people who've been here for years. Renegotiate contracts. You'll be working 70-hour weeks, and there's no guarantee it'll work. I know, but I have to try. Why? You could just let the company fold, take the equity from the estate, and walk away. You'd still be fine financially. Rachel thought about the text, messages from Michael and Amber, about how they planned to profit from her father's death. About Michael's smug certainty that he'd get half of everything. Because Michael thinks there's money coming, she said quietly. He filed for divorce thinking he'd get rich. I want to make sure he gets nothing. And the only way to do that is to prove I can do this. Prove my father was right to believe in me. William smiled, a real smile this time. Thomas said you'd say that. He told me once, when Rachel sets her mind to something, heaven help anyone who gets in her way. Tears pricked Rachel's eyes, but she blinked them back. When can I start? The will has to clear probate, which will take about 60 days. But I can arrange for you to take an advisory role immediately. You can start making decisions, implementing changes. By the time probate clears, we'll already have momentum. Then let's get to work. Over the next 6 weeks, Rachel threw herself into saving Cotter Industries. She arrived at 6 every morning and left after 9 at night. She met with every department head, analyzed every cost, questioned every expense. The layoffs came in week 3. Rachel personally met with each person being let go, explaining the situation and providing 8 weeks of severance, more than the company could afford, but she insisted. These weren't numbers on a spreadsheet. They were people with families, mortgages, lives that would be disrupted by her decisions. I'm sorry, she told each one. If there was any other way, I'd take it. But the company is drowning, and if I don't stop the bleeding now, everyone loses their job. Some understood. Others were angry. One woman told her she was just like all wealthy people, cutting costs while protecting her own interests. Rachel let her vent, then wrote a personal check for an extra month's salary from her own savings. I'm not doing this to get rich. I'm doing this to save what my father built. I know you don't believe that right now, and that's okay. But I hope someday you'll understand. The woman took the check and left without another word. By week 6, the company had shed its excess weight. 18 people laid off. The satellite office closed. 3 major expansion projects canceled, with penalty fees paid from the sale of unused equipment. The company's annual operating budget had been cut by $630,000, but clients were nervous. Rachel spent her days meeting with Carter Industries' biggest customers, reassuring them the company was stable, showing them the restructuring plan, promising reliability and quality. Your father was a good man, one client told her. But this past year, things slipped. Deliveries were late. Quality control wasn't what it used to be. We've been looking at other suppliers. I know, Rachel said, and I don't blame you. But that's over now. We're back to basics, focused on what we do best. Give us one more chance. If we miss a deadline or the quality isn't perfect, I'll personally refund your entire order. You can't afford that. Then I guess we'd better not miss any deadlines. The client studied her for a long moment, then nodded. One chance. But I'm holding you to that refund promise. I wouldn't expect anything less. She made the same promise to 5 other major clients. It was a huge risk. One mistake would cost the company money it didn't have. But it worked. 4 of the 5 agreed to stay. The wins were small, but they added up. By week 7, the company's cash flow started to stabilize. They weren't profitable yet, but the bleeding had stopped. Rachel could see the path forward now. Could imagine the company not just surviving, but thriving. And Michael had no idea what was coming. 3 months after her father's funeral, Rachel received an unexpected phone call. Is this Rachel Carter? A woman's voice, sharp with anger. Yes. Who's this? Amber, Michael's girlfriend. We need to talk. Rachel's hand tightened on the phone. I have nothing to say to you. Well, I have plenty to say to you. Michael lied to me. About everything. About the money. About your inheritance. About what he was getting from the divorce. And I want to know what you're going to do about it. Do about it? Why would I do anything? Because he used both of us. Amber's voice rose. He told me you were getting millions. He said once the divorce went through, we'd have enough money to travel, to buy a house, to start a life together. Instead, he's got nothing. Nothing. And I wasted 2 years on him. Despite herself, Rachel felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but understanding. So you're calling me because Michael's broke. I'm calling you because he lied. He promised me things, and he can't deliver. He said he'd take care of me. He said we'd be set once your father died. The words hung in the air. He said that. Rachel asked carefully, that we'd be set once my father died? That's exactly what he said. He was tracking your father's illness, watching the news about the will, counting down the days. He told me to be patient, that it would all be worth it. And you went along with that. You knew he was using his wife's father's death as a financial opportunity. Amber was quiet for a moment. I didn't think about it that way. He made it sound like you didn't care about him, like you were cold and distant. He said you'd be fine, that you had plenty of money. So you just believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was leaving his wife for me. That means something. It means he's a user who saw an opportunity. Yeah, well, I see that now. Amber's anger had shifted to something closer to desperation. Look, I know you have no reason to help me, but Michael owes me. He made promises. He got me to quit my job because he said he'd support me. I gave up my apartment to move in with him. And now he's telling me there's no money, that the divorce is taking longer than expected, that he might not get anything at all. That's all true, Rachel said. He's not getting anything. How is that possible? You inherited your father's company. I inherited a failing company with nearly $2 million in debt. The house has a mortgage. The savings were already spent. Michael filed for divorce, thinking he'd get millions, but there are no millions to get. There was a long pause. He was so sure. He kept talking about the inheritance like it was guaranteed. Rachel made a decision. It was risky, maybe foolish, but something about Amber's desperation felt genuine. Amber, I know you don't owe me anything, but if you want revenge on Michael for lying to you, I can help with that. How? Tell me everything. Every conversation you had with Michael about the divorce, about my father, about his plans. Every promise he made, every scheme he shared. I'm building a case against him for fraud. Your testimony would help. Why should I believe you'll help me? Because we both got used by the same man. The difference is, I have the resources to make him pay for it. You want compensation for what Michael promised? Help me prove he was planning this all along, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. You do that? I'd do anything to make sure Michael gets exactly what he deserves, which is nothing. Amber was quiet for a long moment. What do you need me to do? First, do you have any text messages or emails from Michael talking about the inheritance or the divorce plans? Some. He usually talked about that stuff in person because he said it was sensitive. But there are a few texts. Send them to me. Every single one. Also, write down everything you remember him saying about the timeline, the money, any names he mentioned. Anyone he was working with. What if he finds out I'm talking to you? Then he finds out. What's he going to do? He's already lied to you, used you, broken his promises. You don't owe him loyalty. I guess not. Amber's voice had a new edge to it. You know what? He deserves this. He made me think we'd have this amazing life together. Instead, I'm 31 years old with no job, no apartment, and no money because I believed him. Amber sent the text messages within the hour. They were damning Michael, talking about the inheritance, about timing the divorce, about waiting for the right moment to file. One message in particular made Rachel's blood run cold. Michael, just be patient. Baby, once the old man is gone and the money comes through, we're free. We can go anywhere, do anything. Just a little longer. Amber, I hate waiting. I want to be with you now. Michael, soon, I promise. By this time next year, we'll be rich and free. Rachel forwarded everything to Jason with a note, evidence of premeditation. Michael was planning this with his mistress before my father died. Jason called back within minutes. This is exactly what we needed. With these messages and Amber's testimony, we can prove Michael's divorce filing was part of a deliberate fraud scheme. He won't get a penny. In fact, we might be able to go after him for damages. Good, Rachel said. 2 days later, Amber called again. Michael kicked me out. Said I was causing too much stress, that he needed space to deal with the divorce. He gave me $100 and told me to find somewhere else to live. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm done with him. I called that lawyer you suggested. He says I can sue Michael for fraud since he got me to quit my job based on promises he couldn't keep. Good. Michael's going to realize both of us are coming after him. Let him. Amber paused. Thanks, Rachel, for helping me see clearly. I know I helped break up your marriage. I'm not proud of that. My marriage was already broken, Rachel said quietly. Michael broke it when he decided to use me for money. You were just a symptom, not the disease. After hanging up, Rachel felt something unexpected. Peace. Not because she'd gotten revenge on Amber, but because she'd chosen compassion over cruelty. She could have told Amber to suffer alone. Instead, she'd helped her. Her father would have approved of that. 5 months into running Carter Industries, Rachel hit a milestone. The company posted its first profitable month, not by much, but enough to matter. The restructuring was working. Clients were happy. New contracts were coming in. But the victory felt hollow somehow. She was sitting in her father's old office, late one night, reviewing financial projections when William knocked on the door. "You should go home," he said. "You've been here 14 hours. Just finishing up." "Rachel, can I be honest with you?" She looked up. "Of course. You're going to make this company profitable. I can see it now. You've done in 5 months what your father couldn't do in 3 years. You're going to meet the trust conditions and get that $25 million. That's the goal. But you're miserable." The words hit harder than Rachel expected. "I'm fine. You're not. You haven't taken a day off since you started. You eat takeout at your desk. You don't see friends. You're running yourself into the ground to prove something to a man who's already gone." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. "My father believed I could do this. Your father believed you could do anything. But he wouldn't have wanted this, you sacrificing your life to save a company. It's his legacy." "No," William said gently. "You're his legacy. The company was just his job." Rachel broke down then, crying in a way she hadn't let herself cry since the funeral. All the grief she'd pushed down, all the pain she'd ignored while fighting to survive, it came pouring out. William sat beside her, saying nothing, just being present. "I don't know who I am anymore," Rachel whispered. "I used to be someone who trusted people, who believed in love, who saw the good in the world. And now I'm just angry all the time, suspicious of everyone. I look at people and wonder what they want from me. That's what betrayal does. It changes us. But I don't want to be this person. This hard, cynical person who can't let anyone in. Then don't be. You chose how you responded to Michael's betrayal. You fought back. You saved the company. You won. Now choose how you move forward. Do you want to spend the rest of your life fighting? Or do you want to start living again?" Rachel thought about that. She'd been so focused on winning, on beating Michael, on saving the company, on proving her father right, that she'd forgotten what came after victory. "I don't know how to live anymore," she admitted. "I only know how to fight. Then maybe it's time to learn." That conversation stayed with Rachel. Over the next few weeks, she started making small changes. She took Sundays off. She started seeing a therapist to process her father's death and Michael's betrayal. She called old friends. She'd been ignoring Dot. She also started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped families going through financial crises. Every week, she spent 3 hours counseling people about debt management, business restructuring, navigating difficult times. Dot was there, sitting across from a woman whose husband had just died and left her with a failing business and mountains of debt. That Rachel had her realization. "I don't know what to do," the woman said, tears streaming down her face. "He always handled the business. I don't know anything about running a company. I don't know anything about it. And everyone keeps telling me to just sell it, to walk away. But it was his dream. How can I just let it die?" Rachel saw herself in that woman. The grief, the confusion, the desperate need to honor a loved one's memory. "You don't have to do this alone," Rachel said. "And you don't have to sacrifice yourself to save the business. Your husband's legacy isn't just the company. It's you. The life you build going forward. The way you honor his memory by living well." As she said the words, Rachel realized she was talking to herself as much as to the woman in front of her. She'd been so focused on saving her father's company that she'd forgotten to save herself. She'd won the battle against Michael, had secured the inheritance, had proven she could do what her father asked. But somewhere in the fighting, she'd lost sight of what actually mattered. Her father hadn't left her that trust fund to trap her. He'd left it to free her, to give her the resources to build whatever life she wanted. That night, Rachel called Lauren. "I think I've been doing this all wrong," she said. "Doing what wrong?" "Everything. The company, the trust fund, all of it. I've been so focused on meeting Dad's conditions that I forgot to ask myself what I actually want. And what do you want?" Rachel thought about it. "I want to help people. I want to build something meaningful. And I want to stop being angry all the time." "Then do it," Lauren said simply. "You've proven everything you needed to prove. Now live your life." The divorce hearing was scheduled for a cold morning in late February, 8 months after her father's funeral. Rachel sat in the courtroom with Jason, watching Michael and his attorney shuffle papers at the opposing table. Michael looked diminished somehow, his suit wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his confident swagger gone. Amber had filed her own lawsuit against him 2 weeks earlier. The stress was showing. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Elizabeth Morrison entered no relation to Michael, thankfully. She had a reputation for no-nonsense rulings and had reviewed the case files extensively. "We're here for Carter versus Morrison. Dissolution of marriage," the judge said. "I've reviewed both parties' filings." She looked over her glasses at Michael. "Mr. Morrison, your petition claims entitlement to half of your wife's inheritance based on her father's death. Is that correct?" Michael's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Morrison supported Mrs. Carter through her father's illness and believes he's entitled to equitable distribution of marital assets, including the inheritance. The inheritance that came after you filed for divorce," the judge asked. "The filing date was unfortunate timing." "Unfortunate timing?" Judge Morrison repeated. "You filed for divorce 3 days before your father-in-law's death, while your wife was planning his funeral. My client's decision to file was based on irreconcilable differences that had existed for some time." "I'm sure they had." The judge turned to Jason. "Mr. Collins, I've reviewed your counterfiling. You're claiming fraud." "Yes, Your Honor. We have extensive evidence that Mr. Michael Morrison conspired to profit from Mr. Thomas Carter's death. The divorce filing was part of a deliberate plan to claim assets that Mr. Morrison believed would be substantial." "And were they substantial?" "The actual inheritance was modest, a struggling company with significant debt and a house with a mortgage. However, Mr. Morrison believed he was filing for millions based on false assumptions. We have text messages, emails, and witness testimony proving he tracked Mr. Carter's illness and deliberately waited for his death to file." Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose. "That's quite an accusation. Let me see this evidence." Jason handed up a thick folder. The judge spent 15 minutes reading through it, her expression growing darker with each page. Finally, she set down the folder. "Mr. Morrison," she said, looking directly at Michael, "did you or did you not discuss with your girlfriend a plan to file for divorce after your father-in-law's death in order to claim inheritance assets?" Michael's lawyer tried to intervene, but the judge held up her hand. "I'm asking Mr. Morrison directly. Answer the question." Michael's face was pale. We discussed the timing." "Yes." "The timing. Meaning you specifically waited for your wife's father to die before filing for divorce." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" "Explain to me how text messages saying, 'Once the old man is gone, we're set,' should be interpreted." Michael had no answer. "Mr. Morrison, I'm granting the divorce. You will receive nothing from your wife's inheritance, nothing from Carter Industries, and no alimony. Furthermore, you will be responsible for Mrs. Carter's legal fees in this matter." Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a satisfying crack. Michael sat frozen in his chair. Across the aisle, Rachel felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "It's over," Jason said quietly. "You're free." As they walked out of the courtroom, Michael called after her. "Rachel, wait." She stopped, turned to face him. "I'm sorry," he said. He looked desperate, broken. "I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. I made terrible choices. I let greed take over. You thought you'd get rich off my father's death," Rachel finished. "You thought you could use me, discard me, and live happily ever after with Amber and a pile of money you didn't earn. I lost everything. My job fired me when the fraud investigation became public. Amber's suing me. I'm living in a studio apartment, working retail to pay my legal bills. That's what you deserve. I know." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "But Rachel, I did love you. At first, before everything got complicated. There was a time when we were happy." Rachel looked at the man she'd once married, once trusted, once loved. She could see he wanted absolution. Wanted her to tell him it was okay, that she understood that he wasn't really the bad guy. But she wouldn't give him that. "Maybe you did love me once," she said quietly. "But you loved money more. You chose greed over honesty. And now you get to live with those choices. I forgive you, Michael, not for your sake, but for mine. I'm not going to carry anger around anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was okay. It just means I'm done letting you take up space in my life." She turned and walked away. And this time, he didn't call after her dot in the elevator. Jason smiled at her. "That was gracious, was it? You could have destroyed him. Instead, you freed yourself." Rachel thought about that. "He's already destroyed. He did that himself. I don't need to pile on. Your father would be proud." "I hope so." 1 year after her father's funeral, Rachel stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Carter Foundation. The nonprofit was housed in a beautiful renovated building downtown, dedicated to helping families save their businesses during difficult transitions. The foundation would provide consulting, mentorship, and in some cases, capital to keep companies alive when their owners died or became incapacitated. Everything Rachel had wished existed when she needed it most. Carter Industries was thriving now, profitable for 8 consecutive months. Rebecca Hayes, the CEO Rachel had hired 6 months earlier, was exceeding every growth target. The company no longer needed Rachel's constant attention. It was sustainable, growing, secure. The $25 million trust fund had transferred to Rachel 3 months ago, once the company's profitability was confirmed. She'd used $10 million to expand Carter Industries, $5 million to fund the foundation, and invested the rest. Lauren stood beside her at the ceremony. "Dad would love this." "I hope so. This is his legacy as much as mine." "No," Lauren said. "The company was his legacy. This is yours. You took what he left you and made it into something beautiful." After the ceremony, Rachel found herself standing alone in the foundation's main office, looking at the mission statement painted on the wall. Building futures from loss. Honoring the past by investing in tomorrow. Her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Ms. Carter? This is Emma Rodriguez. My husband died 3 weeks ago. He owned a small manufacturing company, and I don't know what to do. Someone told me your foundation might be able to help." Rachel smiled. "Yes, we can help. Why don't you come in tomorrow morning, and we'll talk about your options." "Really? Just like that?" "Just like that. You're not alone in this, Emma. We're going to figure it out together." After hanging up, Rachel looked around the office, at the foundation she'd built, at the life she'd created from the ashes of betrayal and loss. Michael had tried to destroy her. Instead, he'd set her free. Her father had left her an impossible challenge. She'd met it and found herself in the process. She'd learned that the best revenge wasn't cruelty. It was building something beautiful from your pain. That forgiveness wasn't about condoning what someone did, but about refusing to let their actions define you. That legacy wasn't just about preserving the past, but about creating a future worth living. Rachel Carter had gone from betrayed wife to business owner to philanthropist. She'd saved her father's company, won her freedom, and built something meaningful from her lost dot, and now, standing in the foundation that bore her father's name but carried her vision, she finally understood what he'd been trying to teach her all along. True strength wasn't about never falling. It was about what you chose to build when you got back up. The end moral of the story. Betrayal can break you or remake you. The choice is yours. When people try to profit from your pain, the greatest revenge is not bitterness, but building a life so meaningful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a footnote in your story of triumph. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let someone else's cruelty define your future. And sometimes, the hardest challenges we face are actually gifts in disguise, forcing us to discover strength we never knew we had.